Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Hendrik. I'm gonna be the MC for tonight. And first of all, I want to welcome you all to sorry. So this is gonna be a Startups Week event, Startup Week Tallinn 2019. We're gonna have a lot of smart people talking today. Hopefully everyone can learn something. So the event is called Balancing the Startup Equation, Balancing the Developer Startup Equation, something like that. So I'm gonna welcome Marika on stage. She's gonna talk about Startup Week Estonia first, a few words, so I'll pass the mic off to you.
Thank you. Before kicking things off, I wanted to just say a quick welcome from Startup Week team, and also give you a brief overview of what's happening throughout the week. So this event is part of Startup Week Tallinn. We have in total 75 events happening all around the city. This year we also have few events in Pärnu and Narva and Tartu, so we're growing bigger with every year. And I also want to especially bring out Future Founders, which is a special track aimed for high school students and smaller kids. So if you have younger generation at home, then check those events out and send your kids to there. We're showing for high school students. We're also showing the movie on Friday night. So if they're interested in free movie screening and learning about the startup scene, then all the high school students are welcome there. So with that, again, welcome to the event. I'm super happy to see so many of you coming here, and I hope you enjoy the event.
Thank you. Thank you, Marika. We're gonna start off with our first speaker. He's the Cto of Inspire. He's led large teams there, and today he's going to talk about a question we've been pondering and for quite a while. He's going to talk about lead developing. Is it like a promotion or a choice that you get into? So he has a lot of experience, and he's going to give us a better understanding of that. So please welcome him on stage, Mart Esberg.
Hi everyone, I'm Mart. I'm working in a company called Insli, and I have the role of CTO there. So I personally don't believe in the roles that much, so my responsibility is more just to run the technical part of our company. And today I'm going to talk about this topic, becoming a lead. Is it a promotion or a choice? And I'm maybe handling it in a little bit different view, so that I'm going to talk combining this with our company story, so that maybe every one of you, when you're working in startups or thinking of actually starting a startup, then you maybe can connect what I'm actually trying to say here. So just my curiosity, that how many people here are actually working in a startup? Okay, so my next question is quite pointless, that how much of you would like to work in a startup? All right, so this is, right. So our journey, it has been quite interesting. I have been actually part of that from the beginning. So I would maybe like to give you a very short and brief overview, otherwise we will be here for hours. Right, so I'm going to combine this topic with our journey. So, our system itself, I don't know how much you have heard about Insli, is that we are actually a platform which is offering solutions for insurance companies. It's business to business, SaaS. So that maybe give you some kind of perspective of what we do. By the way, another interesting question. How much you have heard about actually Insli? Do you know? Have you heard the name? Okay. 4 people. That's good. That's better than last time. So we're coming to a picture. Right. Let's start from the very beginning of Insli. Is that we were a spin-off from Easy. Easy is the largest broker company in Estonia. So our CEO thought that he did all the magic in Estonia, and then let's move forward to the world, and that's why Insli was created. So we started like a very small group of people. There was only approximately 5 of us, and it was quite interesting situation. Everyone was like really hands-on, and they did. Everyone who was a part of it actually did something. There was no managers, not anything like that. And we had there, like in retrospective, I like to call him the king, like the development king, which he was actually dictating absolutely everything what we're supposed to do. He actually looked every commit. He actually was telling the developers what to do and so forward. So and that was actually basically the killer of the initiative or the promotions or anything like this. He was actually becoming like the bottleneck of our development power. So that was in the beginning. So there was like no actually possibility to actually become like a lead, because it was already like occupied by King, and he didn't let anyone in there. Right. So, but inevitable happened, and we started to grow. So we went to this accelerator called Startup Bootcamp. Probably you have heard of that. It's quite big actually, and we got there like a lot of experience, connections, and then of course we started to expand, like on the company-wise, business-wise, and also from the actually employee count started to rise. So that was quite an interesting situation that we haven't been like before there. So and then you have already not 5 people, you have 20 people. Then you need some kind of managers, because otherwise you would still have like a massive pile of mess and nothing will actually happen. Although Scrum says that it can happen, but I think everyone else knows is that it's actually quite hard to achieve from the very start. So what we did is that we started to create new positions, and we also created the position called team lead. So that's what we put there some senior developers. We thought that's a brilliant idea and everything will turn out like awesome. But it turns out that not all developers are good leaders. You can be excellent of actually delivering stuff, actually developing stuff, doing all of that. But if you are put in the position when you have to lead other person as well, to be like more on the administrative leader, then it's very hard to actually, for some people, to actually do that. So in the result of that, we lost some very good developers because it was causing them a lot of stress, they were demotivated. It was a very hard position for them to be. So putting them into that position meant us bad things. We lost a good developer and we didn't get a leader. So that was in that stage. That was a mistake probably that we made, that we forced some people to be a leader, which actually they weren't actually a leader. But don't worry, the situation got worse. So we started to be on a phase called heavy growth years. This is actually why I call it heavy growth, is that we doubled our developers count within 2 months. So picture the situation that we have these developers, we have some leads who don't want to be a lead, and then we have another set of double the developer count. So it was quite an interesting situation. On the other hand, the positive side is that it actually created like environment for people to stand up, because the positions weren't actually filled, but we were people working there. So some people saw already that, okay, I can take that responsibility, I can take that responsibility, I can take that responsibility. So it was kind of like a perfect environment for developers to actually become the lead themselves. Right. Then again, these phases are just I made up the other week. So it's something that I like to see in retrospective. So then I saw that we hit this kind of stabilization phase where we had like a lot of customers, a lot of GVP already went through our company, everything was going quite great. So then we didn't have to expand so quickly, we didn't have to deliver so much, we actually were able to actually concentrate on our internal structure as well. So we polished all these roles, team leads, vice president of engineering and so forward. So we actually could describe what the role is, actually define it, so that people actually who were actually doing that knew that this is good stuff, and they were like very clear like guides how to do that. And of course it also is that if you want to become a lead, then it's very good that you can see that what is like actual responsibilities, not that you're thrown into water and you just have to swim out from there. So right, so this is stabilization, and maybe just the stabilization from the employee count of view. We are still growing as a company a lot, so we're still a startup and we're still going forward and forward. But that's from we're not adding like 2 times developers at the time, at this stage. Right. So all of that, what we learned from there. So that's probably the key thing here is that we shouldn't get stuck about worrying funding, although it's a little bit important, but not that important. So just get the sustainable vision of your storyline and stick with that. And what's most important is that look the people around you and actually think that what person can do what part. So that we shouldn't be in the stuck of the old management style that we have only one leader, everybody is looking at him, that he's the so-called the king. He should be, this responsibility should be divided into between different people, so that it's like agile and it's like good, better. So right, figure out the people and encourage them, and not only them, encourage everyone to be a part of it. Explain them what is the story, why they're in this. It's like I think in every startup event everybody's talking that, but I think it actually has some meaning to it. That make the story, stick with it, see what people around you, divide the responsibilities, and go forward with this. Definitely, not all developers are good leaders. I can tell you that from my experience, but it's not like 100% truth all the time. There's always some exceptions. We have actually very good developers in our company who have become very good leaders as well. Actually, one is sitting here. He's called Roland. Hi, Roland. and so that we actually, I think we have got like very good developers to be leaders as well. Right. Conclusion. I don't know if this sentence is stolen somewhere, but our CEO is constantly saying that the positions are not given but taken, which actually means that. And if you want a straight answer from me, because the topic was that becoming a lead, promotion or choice, the direct answer from I think from our point of view would be it's neither. So the positions are actually earned, and I don't believe that the position should be given. It doesn't matter if it's a lead, if it's a developer, if it's a senior QA, it doesn't matter. Everything has to be actually earned. So, and that's what we're doing today actually in our company as well, is that we are not putting some people from Monday, let's say, example, that okay, you're going to be a lead now. Is that we're gradually growing the leads. We're giving like small pieces just to get them on board. If they succeed, we can give them more and more and more, and actually naturally we will have a lead. Like not that somebody says that you're a lead, but actually growing. He will have the respect of the other employees. He will have actually the experience, and we know, and it's the confirmation to us, to the management as well, that he's able to do that. Otherwise, the risk would be just too great. And also, we don't need to get 6 months to actually validate that it can be done smaller pieces and faster and faster and faster. Right. By the way, has anyone seen this sentence before? I tried to Google that, but I didn't find it. So
So it might be our CEO wisdom, right? That's awesome. Right. So, anyways, thank you. So, if you have any questions, I'm waiting for the questions.
Did you educate your leaders, your lead, or who gonna be lead? Specifically, do you have some education program for them? We will educate them specifically to be a leader, some developer or.
If we're talking about today, then we don't have exactly crazy education program. We have actually one guy who we hired who's supposed to do that. But today, how we are training leaders is that we are putting them personal attention from the management side. Is it the product people, then our CPO will take that. If it's technical people, then I'm going to take that. So that's how it's done today.
One more. Did you ever try to use hackathons to give them a chance to show themselves as a leader? Or is it a good idea to use hackathons as a leadership environment to test the teams, small teams, leaders?
We haven't done a lot of these things. We have done more on the hands-on presentation or something like this.
Okay.
But I think hackathon would be good. But again, I would like to state that the best idea, or if the best I think you can get the idea if the person is actually a good leader or not, is just to give him piece by piece little task in his daily work. Just if he's a developer, then you will have him the responsibility of being responsible for. Let's take Rowan for example, right? So he was sorry, Rowan, unannounced something. But we had Roland. So he was a developer. We saw him that he's very initiative. He's to take things so forward. So first of all, we gave him a small part, which is Estonian market. We gave him the responsibility of Estonian market to be the technical guy who is actually responsible for the Estonian market. So a little piece, we thought that okay, if it goes wrong, then Estonian market. but actually he pulled out great. So and then we put him more responsibilities, and his development time went less and less and less. And now he's actually vice president of engineering of one department in our company. Any more questions about Inslee?
What was the timeline for this process, and what happens if you double your amount of developers, say, in 6 months?
6 months is I think is more or less, but 1-2 months is not that okay. So the timeline, what I've been talking here, we started 6 years ago. So 6 years ago there was 5 of us, and actually in I think 2 years ago we were over 100. Today we are 80, and that's because of that we're getting more efficient. In let's say 3 years ago we just solved the problems. Let's hire more developers. Let's get them inside. But today we believe ourselves that we're a little bit smarter. I'm not sure if we are, but still that we have, like I said, we're in the stabilization phase where we'd like to get stable, good positions, and actually we want to feel safe that if we add tomorrow 20 developers, that they have something to do, meaningful, and they actually can contribute, not that they have small stuff to do. Sure.
Is it possible just if a lead can be expired, as a milk, expired? He's a good lead, but he's just not anymore. I mean, all it's forever skill, he just
No. I think that in every person is a change. So the leaders are not different at all. So for example, I have been in Inslee from the beginning. I have been developer, QA, HR, whatever the positions in Inslee are, because we were just growing all the time. And I believe myself that I would have got tired if I would have been in the same position I am today for the last 5 years. So I need a change. I need to do something else. That goes for the leaders. Another region, another department, whatever. There's definitely something. And also there's possibility to grow. So, but I don't believe that you will have 10 years a very good manager. I really don't believe that. On the same position. Any more questions? Okay, thank you guys.
thank you, Mark, for this wonderful keynote. And next up, we're going to have an exciting panel of where we get a lot of smart people to discuss stuff. So first, I'm going to introduce the moderator of this event, or this panel. Is the CTO of Mikael's Labs, Oisa Pak. You can come sit here, I guess. And next person we're going to have on stage is the CTO of Pipedrive, Sergey Anakin. You all probably have heard of Pipedrive, right? And the third panelist, or second panelist, sorry, we're going to have is Anton Norsberg. He's the CTO of Meet Frank. Of course, this it's a career app designed for workers. And last but not least, we're going to have Christian Sherman. He's the partner developer lead at ClanBeat. So I'll pass the mic off to Ois, and you can start.
Hello, thank you guys for joining us. The topic that we will be discussing is the quality and quantity of developers that is required for a startup and a growing company. What the startup founders should be thinking about when they're hiring developers, at what stage, what kind of developers they should be hiring, and how many developers do you need in the beginning and when you're growing forward. So you three have different experiences. You have worked in big companies, you have worked in different positions and created companies as well. So maybe a quick word about your introduction, what you guys have been doing, because we also have international audience. We're going live right now, so yeah.
Hey everybody. So I've been in IT, I guess, 2 decades so far, and I've been from service engineering to software engineering, but I grew from a developer to engineering manager at Skype. So recent years I've been mostly about leadership and actually growing people and growing new leaders. And recently I quit the corporate job and now I joined a startup. So I'm at ClanBeat and building up a new team from scratch. So very exciting times.
Hello, my name is Anton, and I'm currently CTO of Meet Frank. I have around 15 years of experience in development in general. We started Meet Frank in 2017, so the development team there has been, at first it was me alone building the initial version for about a year, for like 1.5 years we have grown the development team 6-fold, so at the moment we're 6 people. And it's been quite right in that sense, even in this short amount of time. So it's been from being really like hands-on technical all the time into trying to figure out how to make the team more effective at some point. So taking on a bit more of a process management and building the development culture and the team. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Sergey Anikin. So some people call me Andrei, some people call me Anakin for some reason. So my experience, I started as a developer, as probably everyone here, in a bank. Now it's called Swedbank here. It was Hansa Bank at the time. After 7 or 8 years, by the way, 7 or 8 years is the amount of time I feel everyone should spend in one place before going to the next one. So after 8 years I joined Skype. Skype was around 150 people at the time. It was 2006. I left 2013 when I got opportunity to lead the engineering team at Pipedrive. Pipedrive was quite small, 20 people at that time, around 10 engineers. And now 6 years later we are 600 people and above 300 are in engineering.
Thank you. So my first question is to you, Christian. You have been working in big organizations and now you are going towards a new journey. So what it's like, and when you're thinking about the development team and the development life cycle from now to the point where you will be, the startup will be huge and there will be a lot of user base and you have to scale up. What is the strategy that you can share with these startup founders who are just starting to create these development teams to make it the right mix? Because you have seen it happening in different places, you've been part of that. So what's your like secret sauce for this right now?
Well, I would say one major thing for any startup would be to start from your vision and also set up the culture, because these are like the core components from my perspective. But if you have a good culture and strong vision, then the people who join your business will be more active and take more sort of sense of ownership in this business, and they will help you scale the business, meaning that they shouldn't be a developer just writing code and you need to just giving them orders, but it's about like finding those people who are self-managing and kind of grow into leaders in future, meaning that in the beginning you don't need to have different fixed roles for everyone, but if you scale up, these people in early stage should be able to become leaders. So I really look at leadership capabilities when I hire people in the beginning, meaning that I basically look for generalists rather than specialists, so to say. Meaning that are you willing to do more and manage more than just code? Or can you relate to the product? Do you show genuine interest in the success of the business? And so on. So the secret sauce would be to build a culture, tell stories, and find people who relate to these stories, and they help you scale up this business.
Yeah. So Anton, you have been you started yourself and you created this product, and now you have over 250,000 users already, and there are so many businesses using your product. So now when the user flow comes in and so many people are using your product, giving feedback, and there's so much pressure in terms of scaling the business, and tech follows, obviously. So what has been your key points when you see the business growing up? You have to take care of the business side as well, and then the development team has to catch up because the pace is getting faster. So what are you looking at when you're now bringing in people? You already are 6 and now more people will join. So what's your kind of thinking about this?
So at the moment, when we're hiring new developers, it's definitely we're looking at the kind of the skills and capabilities and their kind of ability to specialize more or less. If we're looking for a good backend developer, then they should be really good at it. Same with the front end or whatever problems we're trying to solve in the product. But this is kind of at this stage where you have the processes more or less in place, that you have a backlog of tasks that needs to be done. You have the kind of product and design, preparing those things that are going to go on the roadmap, and you just need like really good people who are capable of delivering those things in a reasonable time and effort and in good quality. When you're hiring for the first, just the first people in your development team, then it's I agree with Christian. So it's really important to kind of find the people who are capable of becoming those cornerstones, and the kind of certain qualities that you probably want to look for is that they are themselves like problem solvers. So if they encounter an issue that hasn't been kind of put in front of them in like red paint, like how this should be done, then they already kind of can think a bit outside of the box. What's the best possible solution in the kind of most reasonable time? So that's one thing. Another thing is it of course depends what stage your startup is in. Are you just like building like a quick prototype and trying to test the market quickly? Then it kind of you need someone whose mindset is as productive as possible. So someone who is kind of willing to cut some corners, not putting the 3 times more effort into doing something perfectly, because it's a 50-50 chance that it goes out of the window anyways. So someone who understands the costs of kind of over-engineering. At the same time, if you're building a like insurance platform or a fintech startup, then you need this discipline. You can't kind of allow for the hugely costly technical mistakes because it's kind of much more costly to do a critical bug in a fintech startup in comparison with an app that brings you jobs. So it's like a bit of a different breed, you might say.
You have easier job then, yeah.
Well, if I send you an offer that is not perfectly matching to your profile, then you might say, meh. But if I kind of lose 1,000 euros from your bank account for whatever reason, then it's a bit kind of a bit more stressful situation. Yeah. So yeah, like you need people, you need like experienced problem solvers who kind of become the cornerstones, and as you go along, then you need people who can deliver quality, and you give them like the space to do the work.
So, Sergey, you have started with a very small team in Pipedrive, and now 300 engineers. There must be a lot of problems, and there must be this is the goal that startups want to get to, and this is also something that's unknown. What will happen when we are over 50 people, over 100 people, and now you're managing it, and the culture that I see in Pipedrive, it doesn't seem like there are problems. Is it true? And what's your how do you do it basically?
Well, we obviously have everyday problems, right? Like there are customers who are demanding some features, there are systems which are breaking down, not necessarily because of us making mistakes, but just yesterday we had our storage system just failed the memory, and we had increased load on the system just because half of the storage system was not working under our system, right? So you always have some problems. The question is, so the question was really how to scale the culture, if I read it correctly. Because when you have 5 guys working on the same problem, they feel that, they feel the ownership, they all pulling in one direction. But once you hit this product market fit, some they say, and really want to scale the company, right? Like there is a pool in the market. You want to, you transition from the first phase where you really need one type of developers, the developers who can do everything and can pull long nights, very kind of generalists, but also very good at prototyping quickly and understanding business demands and so on and so forth. You're moving into the phase where you really need to start scaling the company and also engineering organization. Together with the company, you start really thinking how not to become the bottleneck for the growing business. I think that's the most important job for the CTO or VP of engineering. How not to become a bottleneck. And there are 2 ways how you can become a bottleneck. One is purely technical. Your architecture system doesn't scale, and then you will, instead of rolling out new features or new businesses, you're spending time fixing the architecture, which is not ideal. And the other is like your business is doing really great. Investors are coming and putting more money into a business and asking, can you move faster? Can you hire another 20, 50 engineers and just do many more things in parallel? And this is where, again, you can become a bottleneck, because you can hire engineers, but will they be productive in like using your tools, using your processes, or within your architecture? Because if it's one application, it's like one hole. All of you have seen this picture, right? One guy is digging and 20 guys are standing around and looking at it. So if you have one code base or one application and you hire 50 engineers to work on it, you will run in the bottleneck that all of them want to commit into the same repository, and they will, instead of writing your code, they will be merging conflicts, which is not, again, ideal. So like there are two ways. One is a Facebook way, where you write your own version control system, or the generic approach where you start using microservices architecture so that each specific component is separately deployable and so on and so forth. So that's how you scale, or how you prepare for scale of engineering organization. Regarding culture, again, you can solve these bottlenecks of, okay, you have architecture which supports multiple teams, but how do you keep this sense of ownership? And this really comes down to the processes which you are using. So the natural pool, how to organize your organization is when you're scaling up, like you have people who know what needs to be done, and then you have people who know how to do it. Then you have some people who are actually testing if those people who know how to do did exactly what these people who know what to do asked for. And then you have also some people who know how to keep systems up during night. So these people also need to know how to run these things, which people who know how to do wrote. So basically there are many, can say, horizontal specializations. But what you really need to do is to keep, because in startup, when you have only 5 guys, they all do vertically. Like they all know what to do, how to test, how to run. So you need to try to keep the same setup in a larger organization. It's not easy. And again, there are some key methodologies. Like one thing is to automate as much as possible, and I call it a safety net. Do you know these guys in circus who are like doing crazy shit under the, like very far somewhere? So how do they do it? They have a safety net. They have either a rope or they have a certain net so that if they fall down, they are actually safe. And this is why they are able to train to do all these crazy tricks, right? So basically in engineering, you need the same safety net. You have all tests automated, you have the deployment fully automated, so that the developer who is writing the code can actually go the whole way through to deploy to production, verify it works on real customers, and then pull the next task. And this safe environment actually helps also to hire many junior people who are not necessarily aware of all the problems which may happen, but they are free to experiment, they are free to take responsibility and ownership, and still not to pull your whole company down. So I think that's how we did it in PineDrive, and I believe this is one of the ways.
Okay, so now talking about the number of developers and what kind of skill set you're hiring. So as you said, generalization in the beginning and then specializing in the end and then automation. So at what point, like this question is for all three of you, you can take turns. What events or triggers do startup founders look for when they have to switch to a different mindset, when the development engineering team has to, now it's time to hire an architect or somebody who takes care of the servers and somebody who's monitoring it. So it's pointless to hire it in the beginning. But what are the triggers that people should be looking for? So start with this, then this, and then this. So kind of a roadmap for hiring the type of developers and the number of developers for your tech startup.
So yeah, if you start from scratch, and you probably need a technical co-founder if you have a technology company, and I see this person with quite wide profile, meaning that this person should be able to put together the architecture, put together a roadmap of a product at least to the MVP stage, and this pretty much everything starts from this person in the beginning. So right now, how I have been starting hiring development team, because we are doing pivot candidates, so basically we're building new product from scratch. And I now have successful hires. We have 2 full stack developers. One has like almost 20 years of hardcore engineering and capability to do architecture, to really think big picture, to really be a problem solver, meaning that not stuck in some specific technology, but very open to learn, very open to see what else is out there. And the second person is more strong on the front-end side, but at the same time very potential on the back-end as well. So they basically overlap kind of, but they merge together as a whole. So now moving forward, as our product will be very front-end heavy, when I imagine that there will be mainly the scaling will be about getting more front-end power in the beginning, and eventually when team is big enough, when we can actually afford juniors, we can actually start building up the skills in team. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just as a comment on the previous ideas, is that if you have a city where there are a lot of cars, then making the roads wider is not going to solve your problem. So it's the same with development or organization. If you're just hiring more developers, then it's going to just end up into the situation where you have one guy digging and everyone else is waiting and looking at each other. So talking from my own experience, I would say that our kind of team productivity went down when there was 4 or 5 people and I was still coding. So then I had to kind of take more of a Scrum Master role, or someone who's kind of running the weekly sprints, or trying to organize what is the work that we do, what's the kind of the changes that are going into the production. Of course, as the company grows or the organization grows, you will probably delegate those tasks as well. So someone will be responsible of actually kind of managing the release processes, etc. But more or less, my role has become someone who does the at the moment dirty work, so that others can continue doing the kind of implementing the business logic as effectively as possible. So kind of from 3 to 4 people team, you probably would already want to introduce some sort of kind of development processes, starting from, let's say, code reviews. So there is like another saying that single developer, or like a developer left alone, is like a loose cannon in a sense. If you don't know what they're doing, then there is going to be probably a big surprise in like 2 months. So kind of code reviews and more or less enforcing the knowledge share inside the development processes makes a lot of sense, because with like reviewing other people's code, or not you as a CTO reviewing the code, but that the people, whatever changes are made have to be reviewed by someone else. This kind of helps to find like simple mistakes, also to kind of spread the knowledge around the organization of how things are being built and what is actually being built. And of course, like the test automation and continuous delivery, those things, I think they need to be done as early as possible, because it's there are like several books written on that this is the DevOps, and the like continuous integration, continuous delivery is something that the only tool that can make your engineering organization effective. Without that, you will have burnout. You will have like 12 PM deploys, because this is when the traffic is lower. If you're a global company, then you don't have this time window. So the kind of the burnout rate is much more higher if you don't have those the safety nets and those continuous things in place. And there's also the fact that the later you push those, the harder it becomes to kind of implement. It's the same with with the simple architectural decisions. If you don't kind of enable the load balancing in your system, then going from 1 server to 2 servers is like much harder than going from 2 to 3, etc. So this kind of those things is much better to kind of take care of those as early as possible.
So, who is actually doing retrospectives regularly? So those who don't do, you will never know that you need to, or you have a problem. I mean, obviously, you will, once you see it, you will know. But if you don't discuss regularly what went wrong and how you can improve it, and maybe hire, or maybe you need to define a new role and to solve the problem, which regularly comes up and never become a priority. I mean, seriously, guys, you should start doing retrospectives. The retrospective is the only way to improve the situation, because in retrospective you actually write down that you have a problem. If you don't have it written down, you will never solve it. That's my answer to the question, how do you know you need to hire a new role, a specialist? How it happened in Pipedrive, this is exactly how, like, so initially we had developers, like everyone was a developer. Okay, we had one infrastructure engineer because we had servers. And at some point we found out that hey, we have this customer requests, like something is wrong for the customer, but customer support doesn't necessarily understand what's wrong. So you need an engineer to dig into customer data, to look at the code, to try to reproduce it. But developers supposed to be writing code, right? But customer is really important. We like without customers, we wouldn't have a business. So these problems are really important, and it's important to execute on them quickly because customers are not going to wait when you're going to reply, like if you reply in 2 weeks, because it wasn't it wasn't part of a sprint, right? So that showed us clearly that we need a specific role which is technical, is capable of doing all this stuff about like going into customer data, going into the code. But this role is not coding. His primary job is to handle this technical customer requests. So this is how we created the support engineer role. Or at some point you see that all this automation, CI, DevOps stuff, like we have so many things to improve there, but it's not getting done because we need to develop a product, because it's being, like these 2 jobs were done by developers, and like maybe we need somebody to focus on this CI stuff 100%. And this is how we created DevOps roles. At some point, like we realized we had over 300 different applications used by Drive employees. And somebody had to administer them and like take care of them, like look if we are still using it and so on. This is how our internal tooling team appeared in the house. At some point we realized that like me and one of the co-founders were spending quite some time handling our security bounty program. And we decided maybe we should hire a security manager into the organization. And so this is how it develops. Like you see that something we started as a like 1 hour a week, one day a week, becoming your full-time job, and it's like maybe you need to hire a person.
Thank you. Now we'll take questions from the audience. Yeah.
Girls in tech, how many ladies in tech teams in development? Is it a problem or challenge, or how you address it?
So we have women in development teams, not as much as we would like to see them. But again, many of them actually came in as junior without any experience, and they became really proficient developers inside Pipedrive. So it's about having this possibility to hire junior people independently, men or women, and just have faith in them. Yeah, I think it's a matter of both environment and the attitude.
In terms of real competition, who do best job? Do they really can do great?
I think the great job is coming again from the person's attitude, not necessarily his gender.
I have a question to Sergei. You said a pretty cool role. You described me that you have some kind of technical specialist of handling the customer request. So who gets that? Is some developer who has been bad boy in the previous month, or because it seems a kind of
this role is not rotating. It's actual position. On some markets, it's quite hard to find this person, but who can become? So we have one guy who was the DBA, and he came in as and he's now running this whole team, right? Some people who were in the role of system analyst, like who actually in their teams have system analyst role. Like in Pipedrive, we have 0 system analysts. We have 0 quality engineers. So we don't have testers. We have developers, and developers. No, actually we have, so again, in terms of structure, we have almost 200 like developers, like the rest of are different roles, but 200 and I think 7 engineering managers. So if you think about the ratio.
Right, but what is keeping them motivated? Because that's like seems to me like one of the boring works for the developer.
It's customer problems are never boring.
Okay.
Trust me, like the customers are able to use the application in such interesting ways that it's never boring. No, but I mean, I understand. These people actually want to engage with other people more than just writing systems. So they're quite technically proficient, but they also have some other passions about, like maybe they care more about other people than systems.
It will be good to get a brief answer from all of you, but what is your general take on outsourcing people for growing or scaling, generally speaking? If you think it's good for one reason, if you think it's bad for one reason.
So I will answer first. We never. Okay, we had a couple of people who came in as contractors, but overall, I don't think it's a good idea because these people don't have a sense of ownership, and they are not going to put the required effort into building the systems.
When I was building the first version for a year, then I asked a friend to help out on a freelance basis. That's about it. So, and it was to mitigate the kind of loose cannon effect a bit. But kind of outsourcing, I would say, especially in the early stages of the startup, it's I'm a bit skeptical about that because having been worked in a consultancy as well before, it's like the motivation is different. So the kind of hourly billable time, it can just bring you this like fraction of what actually needs to be done, and there's a lot of like overhead that you need to go through to actually kind of get the result that you want. So if you have an in-house team who is like super strongly kind of engaged in the product, and if the culture and vision and everything aligns and everyone feels their ownership, then you can get like 100 times further and much faster because you're capable of like pushing those boundaries and people are kind of committed 100%. With outsourcing, there are like probably possibilities to outsource some things, or where it even might kind of make sense because it might be like a project basis thing that needs to be done. There it works, but as a core business, I'm skeptical.
Yeah, actually, no, I actually have a recent experience with outsourcing as well, but it was in the context of maintaining a product as it is and just doing sort of some feature sets on top of it, but it was not about building it like the core product from scratch with outsourcing. So that kind of experience I don't have. One challenge with outsourcing is definitely communications. Wherever this outsourcing is it offshore or not, it actually is multiplied complexity. Communication is even a problem in a company when you are here with your team and still there are communication challenges between people. But with outsourcing, it will be like multiplied. So it's not like a magical autopilot that will just create you a product and you won't notice it. It requires more attention definitely from your side as well. But at the same time, I see there's place on the market, especially today, where there are so it's very hard to find good people. And if your money is running out and you need to deliver something fast, and for MVP case, maybe it's reasonable, but of course you need to consider that will you accept the fact that maybe it's a throwaway code right later, so that you once you have a market fit, you can just invest into a good product team and, if needed, start from scratch. So in that sense, I think there is certain scenarios. Also, I believe strongly that if there are certain areas in your product or business that actually don't definitely have to be part of your main concern, maybe you don't have the skill sets necessary, and you don't just want to hire a person for a very short project with specific skills, then that may be reasonable to outsource it as a project. Like if you have a clearly defined goal, you can specify it very accurately, then probably outsourcing might work as well. But again, I think the heavy work is to find the right outsourcing partner. This is probably the hardest part. Once you find the one, then I guess everything is possible.
Thank you.
I can add one thing. Actually, I remembered we're outsourcing all of our website development. So this can be created by the designer, and it can go straight to the partner. So it's and actually I don't even need to do anything there. So the designer kind of lets them know if something is missing or wrong. So but that type of project is quite easy. At some point we actually tried outsourcing our kind of matching algorithm, but there the bottlenecks and the communication and those things really started kind of being a pain. So, but once we brought it back in-house, everything started kind of running smoothly. So things that you need to kind of iterate really heavily, those you probably don't want to kind of put out of the house.
Quick question, if you're growing from 10 to 20 people, you are learning by doing, but in certain pipeline, for example, there are 100 people, there's a framework out there, IT for you, IT for IT, which actually, they are integrated with DevOps. So there are actually best practices learned from other companies. So have you actually checked those, learned something from those? Yes, no, and second question is, will you publish your own best practice?
So if you search Google, then you will find my article about how we currently, what is our current process, which we designed maybe a year and a half ago and implemented, and now we are very happy with it, but we are already looking for a next iteration. How we came to this, we definitely studied different engineering or product companies like Facebook, Spotify, Nokia. Here, Maps. We have one product manager from this company. So we looked how they run their engineering organization, and we tried to learn. But every company is kind of a bit different, so we try to apply it in our organization. It's quite lightweight. I think all these standards you mentioned, detail and so on, for me they are too heavyweight, and to learn them and to practice it takes a lot of effort. So we just made our own. Is in essence what it does. We basically split. I mean, you still want to split your organization based on certain areas of a product, of features, and so on. So that people have a knowledge of the business itself, not only technologies. And the size of a team is like we can afford ourselves to have a rather larger teams. So, and again, teams, we call them tribes. Very modern. Tribe size is 15 to 25. Now we're experimenting with one tribe being 45 people, and then there is an engineering manager who is kind of overlooking this area. And these people, or their working time is split between maintaining the existing systems, because surprise, surprise, you develop, you also have to keep them running, right? So there is a fair amount of time where developers need to fix bugs, do changes which are required by underlying platform and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of maintenance work which is very hard to distinguish from the new product development. Let's say in Scrum. In Scrum you like plan your tasks and you can put some of the maintenance tasks and also some of the new like product development tasks, and you don't realize how much of the time actually going into this maintenance tasks, which are kind of mandatory. You want your system up and running, right? So and then you realize that the team is becoming like slower and slower at producing new stuff, is because they have more and more things to maintain. So what we do in these tribes, we split people into maintenance mode, so to speak. And this is one group of the people. Usually it's one third of the tribe. So they do on call, they fix bugs, they do other mandatory stuff, and the rest are split between new product development projects or missions, as we call them. So it's and people rotate. So once mission is done, everyone goes into maintenance mode, and then after system stabilized, they can go on a new mission, right? So this allows people to kind of learn from each other, change teams. Also sometimes it's interestingly that some people think that this maintenance team is kind of easygoing because they don't need to build new stuff, but actually people are saying that maintenance is actually much harder to do because there is always something urgent happening, while on a mission you can purely focus on new stuff, building new stuff. It's actually very rewarding and also much easier to be on a mission. What it gives to me, I actually see for a lot, like we have a tracking tool, and I see how much time organization is spending on maintaining versus building new stuff. And this gives me data points which we can discuss when we are discussing the next year budget, when we're discussing how many engineers we actually need, why things are slow, why things are fast, and so on and so forth. So that's a response to your, yeah. But you had another question? The second question was... Okay. About the publishing. So yes, we have it on Medium. So if you want to dig into details how we do it, you can just search on Medium. We have this article.
I would like to add a comment on the outsourcing part, because we are an outsourcing company and we'll run out of business because of the negative comments. So basically, I would think that communication obviously is much harder when you're outsourcing, and especially if you're outsourcing to another country. But if you have figured out what you want to do, like the website example Anton gave, so if you know this needs to be done and this is the result that we were expecting, that is much easier. But if you have to brainstorm, this is the core area of the business that should be done in-house. So if you don't have a team or a technical team in-house, outsourcing doesn't make sense. Because then you are communicating with the technical person and you don't understand what you want. And then you basically run into challenges. But if you know what you want and the team is figuring that out within the company, and then you outsource the parts that you have figured out, that this needs to be done and this is how it should be done, then basically it's possible. And it's working. We have been doing this for 1.5 years and it's going pretty well. Yeah.
Just to add on to your comments, because I'm also afraid of going out of business. There are many different outsourcing models. So right now outsourcing is a big debate. We're speaking about co-sourcing, because you go into a partnership with the client. You guys made a lot of interesting examples, Mount and yourself, that actually show that there is a case for specialization a bit earlier than you think. a lot of the issues that you highlighted have to do with quality, which is a specialty on its own. Even the support engineer position that you created, again, highlight that not everybody is cut to do purely technical stuff. Some of us maybe like to go from the technical to the non-technical. It's not necessarily one or the other. So I'm just inviting you to be open-minded, and I'll be speaking to you.
Thank you. And if you're pipe drive, then obviously you don't need to outsource. But if you, because the big startups take away all the talent, 300 people, and now the startups are struggling to find resources that they need to hire. So sometimes they have to choose between these parts. So if you just want to weigh in on this.
That's true that Pipedrive have a lot of engineers. Also in Estonia, we also have Prague and Lisbon offices. What happened, for example, last year? Like we had some people who left, like for various reasons. Also, just not for everyone. The size of our company is convenient. And I counted, we had 4 engineers who became CTOs of our startups. So I feel proud because obviously people are not going to stay for like forever, right? It's if we do a quality job educating what's the best way to run engineering organization, I believe that these people will go and join smaller startups and produce a quality work there. I think it's also rewarding for ourselves.
Thank you guys. We have some gifts for you. Thank you for taking out time and enlightening us with your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you again to the panelists, we're gonna move on to our next keynote speaker. It's a special guest from teamscope.io. Please join me in welcoming Arro.
Hi, thanks a lot for taking the time to listen to a few thoughts that I would like to share. The topics they kindly asked me to cover would be about first how to get hiring right, and secondly a few ideas on how to then develop and train the people that you have. I have less than 20 minutes to do that, so I better get to the point, right? Now, a few words about Teamscope is that we are a company building a platform that relies on data science and decision science to help our clients make better hiring decisions and then make better decisions when leading and building their teams. Our lessons mainly come from working with some of the leading executive search firms in London and some in our region. So we have had the good fortune of learning from at least the people who call themselves the best. I'm not sure if they are actually as well, but they are on the very top. But now, since our platform has been more or less mature to be used on its own, we see a very wide variety of organizations implementing that, including, for example, Pipedrive, using Teamscope for building their mission teams, Genpact using it to build their digital transformation teams, and so on and so on. So anyway, the lessons that we learned, we see are more or less applicable across the board in a very wide variety of organizations. Now, the big problem that we are solving is, first of all, that modern organizations are no longer built around individuals. So even the biggest individualists in recent history have concluded, after a few failures, that the success of your people actually depends on how well they work with others. But unfortunately, the way we hire people, the way we evaluate them, the way we train them is still focused on them as individuals, very rarely taking into account the people they're going to work with, how they complement each other and so on. So especially when it comes to leadership levels and more complicated roles inside organizations, then hiring success rates are far from what they should be. When we speak to our partners then on executive levels, roughly 4 times out of 10, if you would ask the hiring manager after a year, would you make the same decision again, they would say no. So that failure rate obviously on leadership levels is extremely expensive and painful. Whoever has done very bad hiring decisions in their past, you know personally how painful it is to deal with that, so it is a big problem to solve. Now, the challenge then on how to do or how to make hiring decisions properly is partly science, partly common sense, and a lot about the process of how you make these decisions. Before I get to some of the best practices, I think it's important to cover some of the main pitfalls or main things that you should not do. The first one then would be relying on your intuition or gut feeling, or basically just having a structured or freely structured conversation or interview with a person and then deciding based on your emotion of how you felt about the person, which is how these decisions commonly are made. Now the problem is that your intuition is mostly useless in places where you haven't made these decisions 100 times. So if you hired 100 people, seen how they perform in your organization, and then gone back to how you made the decision and made a conclusion about whether that was a good decision or not, then your intuition is useless. So most of us obviously are team leaders who have hired 1 or 2 or 7 people, so we should not rely on our intuition because it's useless. I would trust maybe Sergey, maybe always, I guess, would be close to hiring 100 engineers, and then I would trust their intuition about hiring engineers, but not about hiring product managers or salespeople or whoever. So don't rely on your gut feeling. The second lesson then would be that we learn from our partners is don't try to be too clever. You probably can't, and the best practice will outperform your clever ideas about doing a challenging development task, asking trick questions, putting a candidate through some special exercise or whatever. Mostly it's useless. A very good example of that would be Google, who a few years ago they implemented these brain teaser questions. I'm not sure if you've heard of that experiment yet. So they implemented these brain teaser questions where they asked candidates stuff like how many golf balls would fit into a Boeing airplane, how much time would it take to wash your car windows in Seattle, so stuff like that. They did it for about 2 years, then went back to look at the data and see how these responses and the emotion of the hiring manager based on these responses correlates with your performance. They saw no correlation at all, meaning it just made candidates feel stupid and hiring managers feel smart by looking at Stanford engineers sweating and asking the wrong questions, but it had no prediction for job performance at all. Now, interestingly enough, a few years after leaving Google, when they asked Laszlo Block what was his biggest failure, he said that these questions are still asked, although they proved that they are useless and they only make the hiring manager feel smart. So don't try to be too clever, implement the best practice, you will get it right 8 or 9 times out of 10. And the last one would be, which is extremely important, don't let the wrong people have an opinion about stuff they don't know anything about. So what you see happening quite a lot is the team leader or the CEO or just the most assertive person in the room will have a strong opinion based on whatever, and that dominates the discussion, and the more introverted engineers maybe don't have a chance to voice their opinion. So people like myself should not be allowed to have an opinion about engineers. Engineers should not be allowed to have an opinion about people who we hire into sales. So we should all be allowed to have an opinion only about stuff that we know anything about, and we should not be allowed to have an opinion about stuff that we don't know anything about. Makes sense, I hope. Now, if you can avoid these 3 issues, which is not simple at all, it's actually very sophisticated if you can do that, then a couple of best practices that we recommend to start from is not, first one is to start by not defining a job description of, for example, you will be a product manager working with these and those people, building this and that vision, but start from the key objectives of that person. So think first, what are the key things that that person needs to accomplish in the first 6 to 12 months. So afterwards, when looking back, based on those things, you can say they were widely successful. Normally you will end up with 3 or 5 very specific goals. And then when you look at these specific goals and start defining the characteristics that are actually needed in order to achieve those goals, you will notice that this is very often very different from what you would get by looking at the job title or the job description. Maybe it's not so different for engineering roles, I guess I'm oversimplifying here, but it's very much so for more ambiguous roles, like a role of a product manager, role of a sales manager, team leader, and so on and so on. When you look at the job description written by the HR person versus the actual goals that their leader or the team member would set for that person for the first year, you will end up with widely different outcomes for their expectations towards the candidate. And now once you have done that, once you have set the goals, once you have defined the characteristics that are actually needed in order to achieve those goals, then the last step in the process, now this is a very sophisticated mathematical and scientific way of doing that, is to evaluate candidates based on those things. Now, it sounds very simple, but you would not believe how infrequent that actually is. Now, what I mean by that is, once you have defined the critical characteristics that a candidate needs in order to succeed, then you should not only evaluate those things, but you should avoid evaluating everything else. What it means is that if you're hiring an engineering manager whose role is to refactor your code base, maybe build up a team of 5 people, manage their work and so on, then the stuff that you normally evaluate during an interview, which to be honest is communication skills, performance under stress, ability to act under stress, the likelihood of sweating weirdly during a job interview, the way you shake your hand and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really help them achieve their goals, but this is the stuff that you normally evaluate when conducting a freely structured interview with a candidate. So defining the characteristics that really matter, evaluating those characteristics in a systematic way, and not evaluating the characteristics that don't matter is the best practice that we see these leadership team, executive search firms are using in their work. Now, when it comes to then developing your team or helping them learn how to achieve their goals better, then only 1 or 2 ideas that I can share from our experiences. First of all, whenever you think about development or learning and development, then normally it's focused on what we call surface level characteristics, which would be skills, education, experience, your ability to write code in this and that language, and so on and so on. It's easy to measure, easy to develop, that's why people mostly focus their energy on that. But when you actually interview people or look at what helps them succeed and maybe even more importantly, derails them in critical situations in their work, then it's not about their surface level characteristics. It's about their deep level characteristics, what would be personality, values, competencies of a person, which come out when, for example, you have to make a decision under pressure, you have to resolve a conflict with somebody, you have to convince key people inside the organization to go with your idea. If you fail in that, then it actually impacts your career much more significantly than your inability to write proper, C++. So when thinking of long-term development, you should also think of the deep level characteristics. Unfortunately, well, even if personality and values cannot really be developed or changed, then competencies, which is a layer in between, and actually a coping mechanism for then dealing with your frequent pitfalls, this can be developed. So things like your ability to manage yourself under pressure, things like your ability to resolve conflict, your ability to network and build your relationships, your ability to influence others. These are skills that can be learned and can be developed. Now, the way to do that obviously is not so simple. One thing that you need to keep in mind is that people do not learn in the same way. So actually figuring out what's the learning style of each individual is critical to getting it right. For example, if we look at our team and some people who are on the right hand of the spectrum, like Karel, our product manager, who learns by going through 200 pages of text, writing a short summary of that text, writing bullet points, and then making a decision. He gave the same onboarding package to our new employee, Eric, for whom it would be complete torture. So Eric likes to learn by doing things with other people, by interacting with a lot of other people, and by communicating directly with them. So if we were to apply the same learning mechanisms for everyone, then for some people it simply doesn't work, for others it would be pure torture. So at least ask people how they normally learn, what's the best way for them to get new knowledge. And the second idea that I would like to maybe plant in your brain is that, especially for developing these complicated skills like competencies, the best way for doing that is learning by doing and learning from other people. So what we do systematically is we map the competencies that we have in our team. For example, my knowledge of influencing other people inside complicated organizations is very limited. So that's a clear gap that I have in my skill set, whereas on my team I have my co-founder Tonis, who is really good at that. So first of all, for me it's important to know that I have a gap in that specific field. For me it's important to know that Tonis has some experience in that and can probably teach me. And then for whoever would be putting us together into a team, it's important to know that I can learn from Tonis how to do that better. So map the critical competencies of your team, find opportunities for them to work together, and you will see it's a much more efficient way to develop these complicated skills in addition to the surface level skills. So that's it. That's the two ideas I had. I hope it was useful. If you do have any more ideas or questions that you would like to ask me, you can. I'm not sure if we have time for Q&A, or if we have time for Q&A, then happy to take your questions.
Yeah. If you know, it is said that young talents prefer startups to big corporations. Is it true or not? Can you reflect on that somehow, on your experience maybe?
We do see very clear similarities between startup teams. Mostly it comes from similarity of values of the people. So we have actually mapped the founding teams of roughly 100 startups. There is a blog post on our website, teamscope.io, you can check it out. We do see very clear similarities when it comes to values, or what you would call a culture of these organizations. It doesn't matter that values are not so much related to age, meaning that the fact that startups have a unique culture doesn't prevent older people from working at startups. I think why it is so in reality is that people are biased when hiring into their teams, and they believe that older people simply do not fit in. Especially it's a problem for startups because none of us have done hiring at all. We don't know how to do it properly. We just hire people from school or the gym or wherever, and we feel that old people are too old. So that's unfortunately the reality. Is not backed by data. It isn't. There is no correlation between the characteristics that you should look for and age.
I have a question. So you mentioned that you should, if you were having an interview or whatever, then you said that it shouldn't describe the role, but should describe the goal. So do you mean like KPIs or OKRs, or what do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, it's KPIs or OKRs would be a good starting point. Then you would I would use a structured way of describing then what are the characteristics that you need in order to succeed. So for example, when we describe what our product manager would need to achieve in the first year, we go from those KPIs to map the critical competencies that they need to have. It's around finding new information, planning and organizing, managing ambiguity, making decisions under pressure. So it's key characteristics or capabilities that you need to have in order to achieve those goals. and then we interview against those key capabilities by asking specific behavioral questions. So for example, if we need to validate whether a candidate has a proven ability to manage ambiguity, then a question that we would ask would be, describe a time when you had to implement a project where the scope was undefined. It was very unclear what you have to do and how to get there. If a candidate has a very specific answer on how he has solved that problem in the past, that's a very good sign. If they start bullshitting or sharing their opinion or speaking in hypotheticals, that's a warning sign that they probably don't know what they're talking about.
I would ask about the deep level characteristics that you mentioned, specifically the personality and values. During an interview, ideally any HR person would like to get to the bottom of a person, so to say, as quickly as possible. What would you suggest, or what are some of the measures that you take or use to get that rough outline of the person's personality and values as quickly as possible to assess whether they align with the company and the sort of people they will be joining?
So we use assessment. We use testing. Kind of a straightforward thing. Mostly, I mean, psychometric testing it has a mixed reputation, mainly because a lot of the methods that are out there simply don't show anything or are used in the wrong way. There are valid methods as well. The way we do that is we analyze the existing team first to understand the personality, the values of the existing team, and also to understand the gaps in the existing team. So if you have people with a too similar way of solving problems, too similar mindset and behavior, that's a potential gap or a blind spot of that team, so you would hire for diversity of that characteristic. Now, how to then interview for these characteristics is again by asking behavioral interview questions to validate how a person has behaved in the past. And now that's a critical difference between asking questions about your opinion about something and how you would behave, but how you have behaved. So critical situations in your past and how you went about solving them. So if I would ask you as a candidate to describe yourself as a team leader, then obviously you would say, I'm collaborative and I'm very fun and I'm inspirational and blah, blah, blah. If I would ask, describe how did you last build a team? How did that team perform? How many people left your team? How many people joined? How did they characterize you as a person? Tell me much more about how you actually behave than about your opinion about yourself or how you would like to be.
Good, thank you.
I guess that's it. Thanks everyone for good questions. Hope you enjoyed the session.
Okay, so thank you all. And lastly, I'm going to ask the CEO of Mikael's Labs to come on stage and share some closing remarks.
Thanks, guys. So I want to thank our team at Mikael's, both in Tallinn and Karachi. In Karachi, the weather is much better right now, so hi, guys. Then I want to thank all the brave people who came to the stage. I remember the times when it was almost impossible to get IT people on the stage. Then I want to thank all of you for showing up. And we are going to organize much more events. The next event will be in Tehnopol on 27th. And the event will be called How Not to Fuck Up Your Startup. So if you're a startup founder, register, there's still tickets available. And I see pizzas are going fast, so I would recommend to hurry up and go grab a bite. And see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.